Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Supply UnChained podcast. Today, we have a special guest, Eli Schragenheim. Eli is one of the foremost practitioners and thinkers of our time, working in management science, the psychology of decision making, and most importantly, unlocking operational improvements across organizations. He holds a bachelor's degree in mathematics as well as a master's in business administration. He's worked in software, consulting, and education. Now, in his 80s, he still has the energy and enthusiasm to consult and advise organizations both in the public and private sectors on how to unlock operational improvements and make better decisions. Eli, I could go on much longer to list all your accolades and achievements, but what would you like the audience to know about you as an individual?
Well, I did quite a lot of changes in my own life. So when I just was released from the army, because you see, I'm Israeli, so I studied filmmaking, and I was a TV director here in Israel. When I was a little bit fed up, so I moved to computers. I learned to be a programmer. And in this capacity, I have met Dr. Eli Goldratt and started to work with him, first of all, in programming of games for adults and simulations that really captured some of the ideas that he has developed. And I really learned, and it was really quite an experience, because I truly believe Dr. Goldratt was a unique genius. And to work directly with him, having discussions with him, was many times very frustrating, but also very illuminating. So I assume this is what I am. And I really like to help managers to get much better results. And it is possible, and they can do it, but sometimes we need to change some paradigms. It's not easy, but it is possible.
So, Eli, for the audience that might be familiar with theory of constraints and possibly the goal, Dr. Goldratt might sound familiar. Eli, you yourself, you've written quite a lot of books. For me, for example, Manufacturing at Warp Speed, Supply Chain Management at Warp Speed, and Throughput Economics were quite formative as I got into this space. You talked about the software simulations. I remember the Mix software that you shared with me, which was a management interactive case study simulator. You were able to track the effect of decisions and deal with uncertainty on how you would be making decisions. It was a very strong tool. You've developed the simplified drum buffer rope algorithm that helps integrate manufacturing and supply chains. And overall, you've had a storied career. You've rewritten our understanding of how to integrate supply chains and manufacturing. But let's say, as you mentioned, looking back as well as forward, what are you most proud about in terms of your achievements in this space?
Look, you already mentioned my mix simulator, and actually it served for me kind of laboratory in which I can do some tests without really lose my money or something like this if I do it in real life. And it got me quite a lot of understanding, both of how to handle the uncertainty, what I called common and expected uncertainty. So small deviations in realities that actually compound too many times to something much more significant. And based on it, of course, I learned from Dr. Eli Goldratt's algorithm, very important one called drum buffer rope. And I sort of suggested to change it to a simplified drum buffer rope, not just because to certain environment it was better, but also trying to radiate kind of the idea that for any business, the market, from our point of view, will be always a constraint that we need to be very careful. How do we handle it? Then we have our own internal problems, and we have something that will limit us from getting more This is what usually is called the constraint in the theory of constraints. Going to this was quite, I believe, quite an achievement, but you may laugh a little bit, but for me, the greatest achievement that eventually I succeeded to persuade Dr. Goldratt himself that this should be the better way. And okay.
That's quite an achievement, Ellie. One of the things that I really like about your work, as well as the theory of constraints, is how it helps us focus. Because, as you mentioned paradigms before, in the supply chain space, we're quite inundated with different categories, algorithms, ways of managing keywords, buzzwords. Um, I was recently reading your blog, and you mentioned that when we talk about, let's say, manufacturing or ERP systems or even MRP or the type of algorithms that we use to schedule and plan work, I like how you simplified it back down to the important goals. The two goals were, what is our ability to make and what is our ability to promise, and what do our customers in fact need? When do we need to promise them by?
Sure.
And
Okay.
working from those principles, it's much easier to actually have some sort of algorithm. It doesn't need to be very computationally complex, but something that can actually help us achieve the goals of the organization. And that sort of, I would not say simplification, but like inherent simplicity that can tie
Yeah.
it back to actual operational feasibility and capability is very unique in some of the approaches that you take.
Okay. What is the question? I mean, yes, I believe also it is simplification, but the simplification again with a target. And the
Yes.
target is I simplify it so I will see the key elements that really dictates what we will get, more or less, because there is always uncertainty. But
So,
I can narrow it to a certain degree and protect the real damage from happening.
the question here is, what have you realized about the supply chain that most people should be aware of? So you just spoke right now about finding the key, signal in this noise, and there is a lot of noise in terms of how we operate and manage supply chains. What's your key insight been?
Look, what I've seen in the world is actually companies in the supply chain. They don't treat the common unexpected uncertainty at all. Actually, they have kind of illusion that if the computer or maybe the salespeople or so coming up with a one number forecast, let us all geared into this one number forecast, which is nonsense, and everybody knows it. Everybody is aware that there is a lot of uncertainty. So, okay, some know better how to handle it, some not so much, but the same individuals who know in their own life how to treat uncertainty, once they are key managers in an organization, they suddenly behave like they got all kinds of estimation and forecast, and this is reality, and that's it. And what is basically missing is to understand the level of the uncertainty, at least, let us say, some that will bring me confidence of 90%, 95%. I don't know how much, and I don't care that much. But just to feel that for the normal things that happening, we are very well arranged, that we have enough flexibility, we have enough excess capacity, and we have enough time to commit to to commit and really achieve this commitment, because it's important so much to our client. And the supply chain is critical here.
Yes.
And too many don't realize some simple thing like actually you buy inventory in order that you buffer yourself from fluctuations of the demand, but also fluctuation of the supply. And in many times it's sort of forgotten. Because again, the illusion of certainty is if the supplier tells us we supply in 3-week period, it will be 3 weeks period, not 10 days later. But they know from experience this is not the case. So
Eli, you have, for example, worked with software, you've worked with a lot of these algorithms, you've seen the inner workings of this. As you mentioned, it's an open secret that most of these, let's say, planning systems and softwares, they don't account for uncertainty. They do work according to these one number demand forecasts or
yes,
static lead time assumptions based on what's contracted. Um, and as you said, it's an open secret. And eventually, once the actual reality does not match up to the plan, it results in a lot of firefighting and scrambling for operations to actually go manage, let's say, a supply disruption or demand surge or a demand change. Uh, there has been technology that does account for uncertainty into these plans, as you mentioned, whether
yeah.
it's TOC with the buffers or other, more sophisticated algorithms. But
Look,
what is preventing us from actually realizing on, let's say both better decision making and better plans, and finally better
look,
execution?
the thing is that you cannot ignore uncertainty. And because of
Yes.
this, you need to find the ways. How do you protect yourself from the bigger damage? Because after all, if I speak supply chain, two things could happen. One is you will be sold out of something that is much more demand that you somehow anticipated, or you order too much and you are left with quite a lot of items you have paid for, but they are not required, at least not in the short time. So, what is first you think, I cannot achieve exactly that at any given day I will have exactly what I need to deliver. This will never happen. And in order for this, I need to make some kind of, call it extra cost. I put a buffer, and the buffer looks like it is an additional cost. Many times it will reveal me because I buy somewhat more than anticipated, uh, and eventually it covers me from being sold out because I truly believe that if I have at the end a little bit leftovers, this is the least damage. And this decision looks like dangerous for me as a manager in an organization because people will come to me uh, blaming me why we have left this or why we have being sold out when the demand was that high, and I need to maneuver myself in between, and it is my problem. Is it my problem, or is it the problem of reality that we need to take and be as good as we can facing it? So this is a critical question, and we need to understand the levels of uncertainty. Uh,
Ellie, you mentioned that we tend to deal with uncertainty in our personal lives. So let's say if I'm planning a car trip, I would not put only as much fuel in the tank as I need to get from A to B. I would definitely have some sort of buffer. Yet, organizationally speaking, we don't seem to take this approach. We just work according to these one numbers.
More than that, usually you fill in your tank and you make the decision to again fill it up when it comes, I don't know, with you to quarter, let us say, uh, of what the tank can do. Okay, I already look to fuel. So in real life, we understand that we need extra. that we should not endanger ourselves by trying to look very, very accurately. And the fuel is a good example also because how much fuel I need in order to make so and so kilometers or miles, eh, it depends. It depends not only on the car, but also whether it's a very slow driving because there is so much traffic or the way is open and we can go fast. And in real life, with most of us, take it into account. Usually, my example is if I suppose I'm a tourist or I'm in a business trip and I need to go tomorrow out of my hotel and go to the airport. Fellow, I hate to waste too much time at the airport. But missing my flight is much more damaging.
Yes.
And because of this, I will take extra time. I usually consult with the hotel people to say, when can I go? So taking on the traffic, I will not find myself in a major problem of losing a flight that I cannot afford. This is normal, but organizations don't behave like this. So whenever you have a forecast of one number, this is bullshit, sorry.
Yes.
Because different products at different market behave differently. Some have relatively stable. I assume I'm making here an assumption, it's not that I know, that how much milk every supermarket brand sells in a day is relatively stable. If you take a certain pasta, a certain brand of pasta, the fluctuation might be much bigger. Again, it's my assumption, not a check, but certainly there are differences, quite a lot. And so for milk, I need normally, and I am getting supply every day, all I need for the next day, most of the time, then my buffer sort of will be much lower than my buffer for pasta that first of all, I get it only once a week in the good, when it gets it, not always, and this is part of the uncertainty. Not always I get the shipment on time or that the specific brand is in the delivery. So I need to understand how much extra I need, what is better to keep all my demand that I delivered, every demand that came up, or having a little bit of extra stock. And then, of course, I need to think, okay, what about tomorrow and next week? Will it be still good next week? If yes, maybe it's not a problem at all. Maybe it's even cheap. So we should, but of course we should store it and handle it in a way that we will not spoil it, etc.
So,
But we need to think about buffers.
yes. So, Eli, I understand this. And sitting here, for example, if we were making these decisions for our personal life on, let's say, or even as an organization, how much pasta or milk to stock based on specific signals that we receive. Yet when we get into these organizations, all of a sudden, the idea is to have the buffer to protect us, but at the same time, there is, let's say, a cost associated with if we, tend to overstock or, again, we're not talking about one number forecast. We need to figure out the right range. But even to be able to make these sort of decisions at an organizational level, at a management level, from what I've seen personally in organizations, there's too much of you used a very strong word there, but there's too much of this performative art around everyone defending their individual numbers, whether on the demand or supply side. How do we actually get organizations when the individual themselves do this in their personal lives to move towards this. Because from what I've seen, there's too much of a, let's say, almost smoke and mirrors performative art between different departments of the organization. We're talking about finance, that's responsible for the money invested in the inventory. We're talking about the demand planners, supply planners, and operations. Um, at the end of the day, the goal is to make these better decisions and improve the business outcomes, yet we seem to be stuck. Most organizations seem to be stuck.
Look, they are stuck, like I think I already mentioned, the huge fear of managers that they need to make decision under uncertainty. And if they are making kind of a sort of mistake, as it looks like by others, then they are blamed, even though they took it into account and they make decisions what they prefer, because they cannot have both. They cannot have both fully protecting that there will never be sold out and never be a surplus inventory. And because of this, they try to protect themselves. So please, suppose you are a salesman and they ask you, Anzar, how much you are going to sell from a product X next month? Or even a question like, how much money you will generate next month? What goes in your mind? Let us say that in your mind, supposedly, you think that you are going, it is possible that you will sell $50,000 or whatever it is. But maybe because of certain things, uncertainty, you might sell only 30. Now, Anzar, let me ask you, how much you claim or forecast for yourself to sell? How much?
Am I playing a, let's say, hypothetical salesman now in terms of
Yes,
organizations?
yes, yes.
So either I will, as the salesman, either I will under forecast what I will sell, so my targets are lower, so then I can break those targets, or I will sell at a more optimistic target. Now, in reality, based on what I know, I would actually go look at the data itself, see what we're actually capable of making or even being able to get from the supply side, and take a decision based on that. And I understand that because of uncertainty, that's completely out of my control. What I will sell is what I will sell, but the projections that I will give will determine my target, my budget, my bonus. So, yes.
Okay, so you may say 30 or 35 to sort of protect yourself.
Yes. I mean, I would not personally, but yes, in this case.
Well, you may take your chances
Yes.
to try, but if it's really not depending on you, between 30 and 50,000, which could be,
I would prefer to give them the range and say this, but
you are going to get the range. But then they will dictate for you that you should sell 50 because you said you can. So
yes.
show us that you can.
Okay, so that's
Okay.
the organization.
Yes, this is a fear that is going on quite a lot into the organization, and it dictates. I mean, my mentor, Dr. Goldratt, already said, tell me how you measure me, and I will tell you how I will behave. If you measure me meeting the targets, I will meet the target. And I will tell you more, Anzar, because maybe I should ask other people.
Yep.
If they quoted, let us say, 32,000, just to look a little bit more, and suddenly they have a chance to sell 36,000, they might delay part of
For
their
the next
sales.
year, yes,
Yes,
I've seen
in
this happen.
order that it will not be counted for this month where their numbers are checked.
Yep. I've seen this in organizations, Ellie.
Look, I once talked with a CEO of an important company here in Israel, and he told me, among other things, that uh, in a certain quarter, there was still at least 1 month into the quarter, he already told all his salespeople to delay new contracts.
Yep.
Whoa, I said, why did you do it? Because you are going, some of those that they will delay will be lost.
Yep.
He said, what can I do? The analysts are expecting something, and if they get more, their expectation will go up, and we are not there. This was actually kind of a blame on the analyst in this
I understand.
analyst in Wall Street that they do not understand normal fluctuations.
Yep. That's a great point, Ellie, because it's not even just down to the sales level, but even the C-suite that has to report to the board or to the analysts of Wall
Of
Street.
course,
This sort of, I mean, Deming would probably call this tampering in a way.
absolutely tempering, yes.
It's unfortunately, keeping organizations a bit stuck, and as a
Mhm.
result, as you mentioned, some of those customers, those orders would be canceled or delayed, and it's keeping the supply chain a bit stuck. So you bring this back to this fear of after the fact judgment. I would think of
Yes,
it as I am a basketball team and I called the right play, but unfortunately the cards did not fall in my favor and we lost. But if I look back at that and review it, I would not call it a mistake. Based on the available information at that time, I felt like I made the best decision.
but the
Um,
critics in the newspaper will call it a mistake. They might
yes,
forgive you if you made the very good decision in the past or so. So maybe it's not all that bad for you. But again, this uncertainty is not understood. And so you as a coach, you are getting blamed for some of your decisions and blessed for other
that
decisions
are
that you
not
have
even your
made.
responsible. That could just be luck or the external circumstances.
Of
Yes.
course, this is what it is. What can we do?
So that is the reality. Now we're talking, Ellie, in terms of how organizations themselves need to change their metrics and change how they gauge good decisions and the outcomes themselves.
Yes,
Um,
but we need first of all to understand why the fear comes. Because as I said, people are not idiots, certainly not
yes.
high level managers. They understand that there is uncertainty. Problem is that there is a lot of mistrust that forces, if you are a manager and you have, let us say, 12 people directly reporting to you, you like somehow to measure their performance.
Yep.
First of all, because you think if you measure them, then your people will work better. And then you need to know when one or two are not good enough, etc., and then maybe kick them off. But how do you measure when there is, and you admit there is quite a lot of uncertainty? So if you told that you can sell 42, still within the range of 30 to 50, but you decided to go to 42, and eventually you sold 98,
Yep.
even less than you. What do we mean? Sometimes this is what happens because even between 30 and 50, this is not 100% confidence.
Yes.
So actually, I'm cutting you, if this is the way I measure you, I'm cutting your ability to understand your own uh, intuition about the level of uncertainty.
Yep.
Because some people are more optimistic than others, etc. But if you would get real feedback Real feedback would, if you know you are between 30 and 50 and happens 42, this is well within the range. If 98, I need to question myself whether this is a fluke. Sometimes it happened, but very rarely. Or maybe I am not considering some of the things and I need to pay more attention and maybe correct my reading of reality. Maybe now it's only 25 to 45. Maybe, because there was a change.
Ellie, perhaps this can bring me to another point. Right now, with a lot of push towards AI and automating certain decisions, let's say in the supply chain, uh, we talked about the role of information and the uncertainty within the information when we are making these decisions. Now, let's say that we're having AI do all of these decisions, as in, we are going to sell this much, we will produce this much, we will order this much. Um, where do you think the ecosystem is heading from this perspective? Again, the reality that I see in organizations is from a data perspective, from an information perspective, it's not fully there yet to be able to automate it, let's say, like we would with the power system or electrons or managing this. Yet, at the same time, the example that you just gave in terms of the uncertainty that we have, the role of data and information is very key in just at least bounding those. We have personally spoken quite a bit about, let's say, Herbert Simon. When we talk about bounded
Mhm.
rationality, we're talking, when we're still at the human level, we're talking about local optimization while global satisficing. And that's, goes against the popular economic theory paradigm of that if I'm given the perfect information, I will always make the most rational choice. We know that is not the case because
So,
my attention, my awareness, the type of information that I have. Now, what is being pitched is that with AI or agents taking over most of these decisions, there will always be perfect information. I know for a fact that is not where we are right now in the world. We're never going to get perfect information, especially in the supply chain.
and AI will not give you the best result, and sometimes it will give you very bad results. But I think we can do much better with how we use AI. Because, for instance, if I like, first of all, AI, you tell me the amount of uncertainty based on the past data. By the way, when we talked about past data and statistics, there is one thing that I've seen that is very wrong. We need to look on reality to see when there was a big change. For instance, in our not too uh, not too early, there was a corona, and the corona made a change. And in some respect, I'm not sure whether the distribution of demand is similar to the distribution of demand in 2019. So personally, I would be a little bit hesitant taking too long backwards, even though most statistical would like. But because of the analytic power of analyzing data, I can get from the data, I can ask the data, AI can do it. Give me a conservative forecast and give me an optimal forecast that the range, well, I would like it to be around 90, but again, about.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it can do it.
Yep.
But then the decision maker needs to decide based on it what to be prepared for, which means if I am preparing for the conservative, I take into account the damage of losing some market, and I need to go into what is the real damage. Because it's not only that I lost market, maybe I also lost reputation, which could be impact my future, etc. Or should I go to the more optimistic one, in which my concern or my damage will be leftovers? I need
Ellie,
to make this decision. Can AI do it? Maybe I can teach AI to do it.
I would say, Ellie, right now the AI that we use is very good in being able to analyze data from what's happened in the past, but it's still missing a certain level of causality. So I would think those sort of decisions that become strategic in nature that you mentioned on whether if I make this decision, even with a 90% confidence interval uh, from the AI, assuming it has perfect information that I trust, which can happen in certain industries, uh, the fear of losing brand reputation or fear of losing a specific target market, that sort of causality, I would say, is still a bit far away in terms of what AI can do. But the managers themselves need to be aware of this sort of uncertainty, both in the information used to train the AI as well as the information that it returns back.
Yes, which means they first of all need to understand that in reality there is a very real uncertainty that AI cannot really go and narrow it down to one number. And no mathematical equation can do it. Okay? And when I speak about mathematics, because I have a bachelor degree in mathematics, so I did not continue my academic career in mathematics, like one of my changes. But one of the most important things I've learned that in math you need very much to look what are the axioms behind this mathematical solution.
Yes.
And if people will take to look on the axioms, they suddenly will understand how mathematical is used today to do things that no, you believe this is optimization. Bullshit. You assume your variables are independent because this was the axiom of mathematics require. Bullshit. They are dependent on each other. This is reality. Look on reality, please. And then suddenly you realize that the mathematical solution does not apply or not fully apply because you don't really know about the variables and whether they answer the mathematical axioms. And in probability theories is even much more. So there is also some kind of mathematics that called uh, fuzzy theory, or I'm not sure, fuzzy probability theory, that take about. Um, Again, we need to understand that there are some decisions we, the human, needs to take full responsibility for. I can say, okay, if AI can decide very good, extremely good, what is a routine decision and what decision could be seen not routine, maybe I can leave some routine decision or many of them to the AI. But it is still to be checked because my problem with AI, I am not sure about the boundaries.
Yep.
You tell me it can do what exactly it can do and when it does fail. And it does fail many times. So maybe next year or maybe in 2 years, there will be much more reliable AI.
Yep.
We look into it, but from the decision maker, I need to demand that they will have some good understanding of the boundaries of AI and be able to check whether those boundaries maybe are crossed.
So, Ellie, you've been around, let's say, in this field for multiple decades. There's a lot of things that right now we are rediscovering from my generation. Some of the paradigms that we talked about, we could go very deep into some of the things that Goldratt talked about, whether it's cost accounting, not supporting actual good decision making. Uh, we're talking right now about automation and AI. I remember this was around in the 80s as well, and now it's coming back up.
Yeah.
And again, also coming from a math and engineering background, I do see the value in math. I see the value in analytics. I see the value that AI can provide. but at the same time, all models are almost always wrong, especially based on the assumptions that they're built on, as far as the parameters and variables. I do see a lot of good work happening in this space, but at the same time, as you mentioned, all forecasts are wrong and all models are wrong. Some less than others, but as long as we can account for some of this uncertainty in our decision making itself, the model uncertainty, the information uncertainty, and if we as the decision makers are able to incorporate this and understand the bounds, then we can make smarter decisions. Now, from your perspective, where do you see that the ecosystem is currently heading? Because do you see any changes from the time when you and Goldratt were working in the 80s and 90s? Or are some of the same problems coming up?
I think not so much, certainly because of treating uncertainty. You already mentioned cost accounting and its flows. Maybe there is a little bit movement there. I'm not, even this, I'm not absolutely certain whether I see a real movement or not. And the coming of technology, the huge development of technology, bring us to kind of a problem that the pace of new technology is a little bit too fast for us as human to get used to and to, like I said, to understand at least the key boundaries of the new technology. And the new technologies many times are not focused on what they want uh, to improve, uh, what limitations that we suffer, let us say today, they will uh, eliminate. This is, so I see it in AI, doing AI for things that we don't really need AI for that. I mean, it does not bring us much relief how much my air conditioning will work and when to stop it, etc. I mean, okay, but there are certain things that I really need quite a lot of help, like in measuring uncertainty, like trying to tell me something. Look, Elio, look, Anzar, there is a change here. Look for it. And I, as a key manager, I need to know. I need to know whether some kind of behavior of my supplier has changed. Because a supplier is another organization. And I need to understand if this means, God forbid, that they are going to bankrupt, or they have been taken over by another organization and the management are going to be replaced. You cannot know, right? I mean,
Yep.
you may know if you really look for it, then maybe you find some information about it. But I need to know about what I called emerging threats. Now, one of the things that I think that AI could achieve is exactly that. And certainly supply chains should be very keen to have something like this. If Because supply chain, actually everyone depends on the other
Yep.
parts of the supply chain. And one of the most important things that Goldratt has visioned, he didn't go there, is eventually people need to understand the supply chain. That as long as a last point in the supply chain have sold, no one has sold. Now, of course, technically, it's not absolutely true because I can sell to the distributor. I'm a manufacturer, let us say, sell to a distributor who sells to shops that sell to the customers. But then, if there was already not much demand for what I sold, the problem, I will see it much later and much bigger.
I agree with you here, you brought up 2 points there. I agree with you that AI can be extremely useful. You are very optimistic on how AI can be used to help you manage uncertainty, how it can help you double check things, how it can run certain calculations that used to be very complex. Now, onto your second point regarding the way that a supply chain is constructed and the interdependency between organizations. We used to play this, in the beer game simulation,
Sure.
and where we track the bullwhip effect. What I see now, and let's say we have perfect information of our end-tier supply chain all the way from our upstream suppliers to our customers. Uh, Accounting for uncertainty, even accounting for that, if we have this perfect information, we have a general idea of what the best decisions each node should be taking. Yet in the modern world, where I see with supply chains, and a lot of it has to do with, let's say, information sharing, trust, and collaboration, um, there's a very myopic view that if I'm a retailer or a distributor, I it's very hard for me to get my endpoint demand, and this could be in terms of sales or it could be in terms of usage in specific industries. I am still trying to locally optimize and globally satisfy, and that is as a result of the frameworks and paradigms in place. Now, information and AI has a key role here where it can help make decisions that are better all along the chain. And it doesn't necessarily have to be with AI even. For example, we could look at it from a
Of
TOC
course.
perspective. Where's the constraint? Where do we need to improve here? But just from a modern supply chains, modern organization perspective, it seems that most organizations are optimizing for their own metrics. You brought up the COO that's reporting to his analysts. I don't think he necessarily cares if his downstream customers are getting the right things, if his upstream. And it's not a blame game, but at the same time, this sort of mentality has taken over.
Okay, so mentality maybe needs to change a little bit and to understand at what point the organization really exploit all its capabilities and capacity and getting most of what it can do unless you take one bold step to leap into the future, and this is also always true. But the whole thing about perfect information, please,
It's never.
nothing like this. Because every decision I'm making is about the future. There are always unknown when we come into the future. Some of the unknowns we can understand and consider. And this is what I really suggest. What can we consider? But when we consider, we already are in a kind of a conflict between two different decisions. Be conservative, be optimistic, and what is the price we pay when reality behaves according to what is expected, but not what we wanted. Okay. And we need to take it and we need to consider it, and management needs to be like that. Now, we try to optimize all the time. Please, something you can see even in something like university. Let us say, I was used to marks in percentages. So suppose in a certain course I got 78 and you got 80. Are you necessarily a better student than me? Is it fully understood for everyone? Again, intuition will say, well, close. But come on. Why do they need to go to this level? Now, from my point of view in the university, when they try to judge the students, they need to do two things that are important. One, some students definitely should not be allowed to continue because they are not capable. And what else that is nice to have is to know who can be a star, because especially in the universities, they would like to see your capabilities and maybe lead you to make a PhD there, something like this. With all the rest, why do you even try to differentiate between a good student and somewhat even better student and good but maybe somewhat less? Why? What does it mean? Eventually, you told about KPIs and things like this, but these are also artificial. They also don't tell you the reality as it is. It's kind of approximation of reality of what you get. And sometimes the approximation is really not good enough. For instance, there is someone with a huge potential, but in exams, they go into huge tension and they're definitely not in their best. Okay, you might say the university, sorry, I'm not capable of unlocking this target. So, okay, at least you tell yourself that you give up on these students because you are not sure whether they know good enough.
I think it brings me back to the sports analogy, Ali. When we talk about stat chasers, people that run up the stats but don't necessarily contribute to the team winning, versus players that, let's say, it's not just their individual performance, but they uplift the rest of the team and how they play. I'm wondering how organizations, again, we're talking about the status quo, judging based on KPIs, OKRs, that can always be fudged and that can also influence behavior in counterproductive ways to the organizational goals. Um, there has to be some sort of better solution. We've spoken at length about what the ecosystem and supply chain is missing. The key theme here is how to deal with uncertainty, how to acknowledge it, how to, because you can't control everything. There's no perfect information, as we talked about, there's no perfect model, but there are ways to make better decisions. And that's what we have to do to improve our business outcomes, our operational outcomes. But let's say I would think that the technology is there. There is a lot of improvements being made, but the technology as it stands today is enough to make better decisions. What do you think is truly missing? Is it the current processes in place? We've talked about, let's say policy constraints that already exist. Is it the people operating these supply chains and their education and how they deal with it? Is it the organizations, how they're constructed, how they measure? Uh, I know it's hard to point to a specific problem when we talk about this, but where would you like to focus? Where do you think we should focus now?
I really think that understanding better how to deal with uncertainty is the most immediate importance, because without it, people go into the fear of unjust judgment after the fact. And to me, this is a true killer. Like you said, technology adds to us quite a lot of capabilities, and maybe in the future we could know more and we would understand better how to use it. If we use technology without fully understanding the boundaries, there is a huge risk with it. And more than that, the development of the technology should really be aware of when it brings all the value and what might in real life uh, limit or even make a damage out of this potential value. Technology is a power. Power can do good, power can do very bad. So it eventually depends on the people, how they use it, for what they use it. And I think management need to learn quite a lot. First of all, not to buy the technology promises very lightly, to understand much better what it brings, and to see that there is value to it, and still understands, and on top of it, there will be uncertainty. It will not fully solve. It could reduce the impact of uncertainty to a certain degree because it could give you a narrower range that what you can achieve now using your intuition and the other people's intuition you are working with by analyzing the past data and being also careful what data you give and what data you don't give, because this is significant. This is where I say it should start. But the whole thing about the fear is also connected to the kind of the how you manage human beings. Because one thing we need to realize, human beings have their own wishes and their own interests. So even when I am the CEO of the company, but I have a family, I have private desires, I have my own interest. How this plays with the interest of the organization as such? Kind of a question mark. One of the big mistakes, I think, is that there is kind of a tendency to give the CEO, give them kind of a program in which on top of their salaries, they will get bonuses on good results. And when I look on the bonus and suddenly it can impact my decisions, whether to take a step, that there is, let us say, 10% that it could be causing a loss, and 90% that it could make some profit. And I may say, I don't want to take the chance. Profit, nice, I will get more bonus, but this will be next year or maybe only in 3 years from now that it will impact. But right now, I don't want any bad result. I want to have at least the result of last year, hopefully 5% more. This will be nice because then I will get my bonus.
We have a lot of people that are risk averse in this aspect, and yes,
And if there are tendency into risks, this is even more dangerous.
yeah,
So the whole, if you link your results, which only partially depending on you, please, Anzar, understand. Even CEO, good, excellent CEOs, the things that they bring, almost everything, they know internally. It's not just them. Maybe they are also lucky
yep,
because there is such kind of uncertainty. You need to disconnect the extra salary, the extra bonuses from immediate results that you don't know how much of them really because, and what might have been, because what might have been you don't know. If the behavior would be somewhat different. This is simple understanding, just understanding uncertainty. You don't need to understand the mathematical equation and probability theory to go into deep into it. No, you need to understand the basics of what it comes. What is a basic probability? Understand that there is always probability that something that you don't even think about will happen, but you need to decide that, well, those things I cannot take into account because I don't know. But what about the uncertainties that you do know? Because for me, the forecasting the range, like we said, about 30,000 sales base versus 50,000 bales, is actually you have outlined to yourself your areas that you know you don't know.
yep,
This is you admit you don't know. Beyond it, you don't say it could not happen. But this is really very small probability, so we should not base our action on some small probabilities to happen sometime in the future.
Ali, to help manage this fear yet also provide the right information, I was thinking of the concept of recording near misses. So this was used by, let's say, aviation, where pilots were afraid of showcasing their mistakes, but you could do it anonymously. But once you start recording these near misses, it at least gives a signal for systemic improvements. Do we need some form of that from a management perspective, from middle management to report near misses? That
Of
because I
course.
feel there's just a fear to show that we talk about being judged after the fact for a decision that you made that you thought was good based on the time. There is also a tendency to not report those cases, as in,
Sure.
and that as someone in this space, not having information about, let's say, customer orders that came in not being entered into a system, that's not helpful. Even if it I know, Ellie, we're at the end of our time. Thank you so much for your time. You've talked about, what the ecosystem is missing, some of the work that you've been doing. Um, how can our audience know a bit more about what you're doing, even, into your 80s? What are you doing to help address some of these gaps? I know you run this blog that I read quite often, elischragenheim.com. It's very enlightening. But I see that you're still active working in software. I see that you're still active consulting with companies.
I'm still active by people can call me and we can discuss all kinds of problems through Zoom. I'm trying not to fly too much, certainly not too far, but the Zoom or any other media is really great and we can discuss things and looking for the really common sense possibilities that exist, including bringing insights that are strange to the industry in which some people are. Because in every industry, there are some paradigms that are there and they are not aware about insights that could solve them that exist elsewhere. I mean,
Yep.
I went a little bit into aviation, and sometimes their systems are very different than certainly in supply chains or so. And I wonder. So each one has some solutions that could help, but you need the logic and you need the fully understanding of what you know and what you don't know. And if there are things I don't know, okay, what can I do? Just pretend that they don't exist is bad.
Yep.
It will do bad to you. Recognizing them, at least making you watch, making you looking for signals that will tell you that something is developing, like I said about developing threats, that a certain signal. These are important. They are not too difficult to learn, certainly from people who really did things and they have achievements, but this they still miss.
I think finding these common sense solutions it seems simple at first, but it usually has some of the biggest impact. And it's easier
Oh,
to,
it does have the biggest impact, and it's not easy always to convince immediately. It
yes.
could take time, and yes, we are human beings. We need to understand our boundaries as well, pretty much understand our boundaries.
Ellie, I think this is the end of our podcast. Thank you so much. Anita will edit some of this and give it to you before we publish. I think